Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, volunteering, community service, and spreading positivity. We're all about the positivity, always about the positive vibes here on the show. And with me right now, I've got a very special guest. He is a wrestler out in Northern California. He's graduated from the Next Level Pro Wrestling School. He currently trains at the Ugly Dojo. And he's got a story that he's going to share with us today. I'm pleased to welcome the one, the only, Lo Devereaux. Welcome to Wrestling with Heart.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stanley. Glad to be here.
Yes, it's my pleasure. So, are you from California originally?
So it's where I was raised. I was born in Nakhon Si Thammarat, Thailand. So maybe 5 hours out of Bangkok, Thailand. But yeah, I was born in Thailand. But yeah, I was raised in Sacramento.
Wow, okay. Thailand. Any memories that you recall?
Very wild ones. As a kid, I was there for a year or two before my mom and I moved to Sacramento. Well, Rancho Cordova, which is a little city outside of Sacramento. That's where I was raised. But they were all like kind of bad ones. Like I fell down the stairs when I was a baby, and I actually can kind of remember little things of that. But that's my main memories, and seeing like my grandma one time before she passed away. I don't have too many memories from when I was a child. I have since gone back to Thailand and was able to make new memories as an adult. So I have more memories as an adult than I do as a child of Thailand.
Yeah, I mean, memories are very subjective, and I've heard on average a lot of people remember things as early as 3, sometimes 5.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, that's pretty interesting though, because like Thailand is like an entirely different culture than the United States.
Yeah, very. My mom's lived here for maybe about 30 years. And while she is Americanized, I would say she still longs for home. She still watches a lot of Thai TV and a lot of culture stuff. And it's very different. Like when I walk into her house, it's a different vibe, even though we're still in America and I'm still in Sacramento when I'm seeing her. It's a different vibe. In Thai, like when you're speaking with Thai people, it's very tonal. So sometimes my mom's speaking to me and it may sound like she's angry if you didn't know what she's talking about, but that's just kind of how they speak in a sense. But no, it's a very welcoming culture. They were awesome when I went out there. I would kind of just walk down the streets, and I'd never been there as an adult, so I didn't really know what to expect. And just a lot of people were very welcoming while still doing their job. They're still very sweet to you, showing you a lot of respect, even though I may not know as much about their culture as they may like or as whatever. They're very welcoming. So they're very sweet people, as anyone is.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they are very friendly, very open, and want to get to know you, and just loving. It's very important. So wrestling, was that something you always watched growing up?
Pretty much. Like beyond like whatever's on, Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network, Disney, like PBS, like stuff like that. Like I couldn't be Arthur. Like I could take in the values of Arthur. I couldn't be Bobby Hill. I could take in the values of Bobby Hill. I couldn't be, like any of the kids next door, but I can take in those things and think they're cool. But wrestling was something I always thought I could do, if that makes sense. It's like if you're looking from it like from a child's point of view, like it still kind of made sense, like, oh, okay, like I can go to my friend's house and kind of do this, like even though they say don't do it at home, like everyone did it at home.
Right.
But like I remember like doing the La Resistance angle with my friends at home, and like they draped me with a blanket like it was the French flag, and I remember laying there, and it was fun entertainment, and it was stuff that even though we weren't necessarily always wrestling or doing things to hurt each other, like I took in a lot of like whether it was the character or the pageantry. Like I really loved just watching wrestling week to week, whether it was Raw or SmackDown or catching highlights of pay-per-views or whatever it was.
Mhm.
I really was just consumed with the wrestling as a child. It was kind of my go-to. It was wrestling games, wrestling toys, uh, wrestling bags, riding to school with like the lock around my neck like I was John Cena, and I'd lock
The
my bike up.
keychain. Yep.
Yeah, you know. So yeah, I was totally consumed with wrestling growing up.
Who are like some of your favorite wrestlers growing up to watch? Because I mean, that was a hot time back then.
My first favorite was S.A. Rios. I don't know if you played like WWF No Mercy on the
Hmm.
Nintendo
Yeah, I've heard of
64 back
him.
then.
I remember him.
But when I played, I went to a daycare, and all the kids were obsessed with wrestling. So one kid, he brought his copy of No Mercy, and he was The Rock. Someone else was Kane. Someone else was Triple H. Someone else was, you know, all the top guys. So I had to like go through and kind of find who was cool to me. And I saw the guy with the flame pants, and that's who I liked as a kid. So S.A. Rios was my first guy that I loved. I will never not call him out, just because I was like, that's my first favorite wrestler. Like, I feel it's disrespectful to not name him.
Yeah.
But other than that, like my as I started to like understand what wrestling was, uh, I started to gravitate towards anyone who would make me laugh or anyone who would make me feel. Whether it was wow, that's cool, or like I don't know what what I'm feeling right now, but I really think you're cool. Like I really like you. It's beyond the moves. It's beyond that. Like there's something about you to where I'm like, I'm a fan of you. And that's how I feel like a lot of people feel about The Rock or
Mhm.
Stone Cold. You're like, I don't know, man. Like there's just something about you. You're just really cool. It's not even that you're funny or you're this or you're that. There's
Mhm.
something about you. And it was guys like Eddie Guerrero. It was guys like John Cena. And like as a kid, like Chris Benoit, there was something about him. Kurt Angle, and of course there was the guys that were at top. You know, The Rock, Undertaker, like Kane, Stone Cold, all those guys. Like I loved them, but there was something for me that the guys on the rise, or the guys that you'd see them every once in a while. You're like, hey, okay, it's cool to see you, Taka Michinoku. Like that's cool. I like Kai and Tai. Whenever you get those guys, those were kind of my favorites because like, hey, what's happening with those guys? And then they show up randomly. Or Steve Blackman. Like I really liked him. Like as a kid, almost everyone was my favorite, but I narrowed it down.
At what point did you know I want to be a wrestler? I want to get into this. How do I break in?
Um, Honestly, the first day that I got into wrestling, I would say that's the first day when I took it seriously. It was January 1st of 2012. Um, Leading up to that, I would tell my dad like I want to be a wrestler when I grow up, but I just kind of didn't really know how. And eventually, I found the nearest school to me. Um, once I moved back to Sacramento, um, and that was a promotion in Northern California called Total Wrestling Federation (TWF). And my first day, January 1st, 2012, I learned how to bump. I learned I learned like a little bit of rolls. Like I already knew how to roll, but I learned basic rolls, and just kind of just really hammered home on bumps, kind of running the ropes a little bit. But like that kind of really solidified, like, okay, I think I want to keep trying this. Before it was a pipe dream, but once I got in there, it really helped solidify that. Um, and then I kind of had to take a hiatus from that. Just I couldn't really pay for it at the time. I was 18. I was making like nothing. I was working at a skating rink at the time. Um, but I tried again, and I tried with another promotion here in Northern California. It was SPW, Supreme Pro Wrestling, and I was training under Jeff Cobb and JR Kratos and Brian Tannen. He came in a little later on, and he had just left NXT. He had worked there maybe a year, but he was in the first class of NXT, and those guys really helped me kind of, I wouldn't say shake the rust off because I didn't really do much, but just make sure whatever I learned in the first camp that it actually stuck, as well as I learned more things, and I was kind of being seasoned a little bit more. But um life happened again, and the next time it kind of took about, that was what, the summer of 2015 when that happened. It kind of took me a couple years. Like it just, I was working at a high school. I had just kind of was more figuring out who I was as a person. This was my early 20s at this point, early to mid 20s, and I started training again. I went back to SPW in the fall of 2021, and it just wasn't really working with my life. I was learning a lot of things, but I it just wasn't really working with my life. To commute and where it was located at the time, I just really couldn't make the back and forth. Um, but a couple months later, I saw some postings on Instagram, and it started getting the ball rolling. And they had noted that they were in Sacramento, and they're about 10 minutes from where I live currently. And so I got in my car, and literally the day I saw it, I was like, okay, we got to go. So me and my buddy, we went down the street pretty much, and I started training again. And that was May 2nd of uh, 2022. So it's been a little over 2 years since I started my training, and I made my debut in September of that same year, and I've been wrestling since then. So it really took like what, my third time to really kind of, okay, I can do this. I felt like I had matured in my own life, and I learned a lot of life things to kind of better prepare me. Which, when I look back on things now, I was like, yeah, if I would have started when I was 18, like freshly 18, I don't think I would have done well. I think I would have just took a lot more risks, and I don't know that I would have been put in the right direction the way I am now. Um, but that's kind of all hindsight. I don't know if that all is true, but that's kind of looking back. I'm like, I'm on such a good path that I'm happy that I was able to start officially when I did, because I felt more prepared for what wrestling is and what I'm learning each and every time I step into a locker room, each and every time I perform in front of a crowd. Uh, I learn more and more about wrestling beyond anything that YouTube can teach me, anything that I can read in any biography. I learn something new each and every time. Even at training, I learned something new beyond just the moves. I learned something new. So, just my start in wrestling, just being able to take it seriously and being able to have the ability to take it seriously and be comfortable, um, that really helped me solidify. All right, let's do this. Like let's get this ball rolling. Because since then, I wouldn't say I felt unstoppable, but it's definitely changed the way I operate as a person. So, yeah, that's to long-windedly tell you that that solidified everything for me.
Yeah, I mean, as they say, the third time is the charm, and you had that
Oh yeah,
determination. You knew that this is what you wanted to do, and now been able to live out your dream, which is amazing. not everybody can say that they can become a professional wrestler, especially, you know, it took you like that long, three times to be able to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's incredible. It's really awesome to hear about that, it's inspiring.
It took honestly 10 years from the first day I started till when I actually started being able to take it seriously. It took 10 years. So it was a long journey for me, but I think it was worth it. I learned a lot on the in between. Everything that wasn't wrestling, I learned, and that's been able to help me transfer into wrestling.
When you're training, what pieces of advice did you take away from your time training that stuck with you today?
Uh, a lot of a lot of training. If I were to narrow it all down, it's slow down. Slow down. That is the main piece of advice that I've taken from anyone that's ever coached me in training. Slow down. That's and I'm sure a lot of people understand, but and that's not just wrestling. That transfers over into life too. But slow down's the biggest piece of advice that I've gotten from wrestling.
Yeah, because you're doing these drills. It requires a lot of movement, physicality. I mean, you want to make sure that you trust your opponent. Your opponent trusts you, and you just have to work with each other.
And I wouldn't take it as far as saying opponent, especially when I'm in training, but especially in the ring, you're saying trust, and it takes a lot of trust. It doesn't matter if I like the guy. It doesn't matter if I do like the guy. Uh, One of the things I was also taught in training is that's my partner. Um, I don't know how many old school trainers may necessarily like the phrasing of that, but I do in modern wrestling, especially in what we do. I do agree with that sense uh, of that's my partner and they're my partner because we have to have a lot of trust. Whether we do not like each other, that means nothing. But there is always a mutual respect there. So when we're out there, that is my partner. To the fans, sure, that's my opponent. That's whoever I'm beating up. That's whoever's beating me up. But I definitely that is my partner. Um, especially when we're running those drills, I know that's my partner. We're running 5, 6, 7, 8. That's my partner. Um, so I'd like to just take that second to differentiate that term.
Yeah, yeah,
At least for me, uh, I see those as two different things. But that is my own personal teachings.
yeah. I mean, it's another way to look at it too, because you're working with them. You're putting on a show that fans all around the world or in your local town are going to see, and you guys are practicing the drills and the moves, and it's a lot of work.
A lot of it is, and sometimes sometimes I wouldn't say it's more grueling than the show, but if the fans could see what goes into the show, I've had a lot of people come out. I I train at one place and I help coach at another. And when I'm helping coach, as well as when I was training, when I was getting my early legs, I would see a lot of people show up and they're like, "Oh yeah, my favorite wrestler, so and so. I like when I have my first match, I'm gonna do this move and this." And then 2 weeks later, you don't see them anymore and you haven't seen them since. Like this stuff is really grueling. So I've seen a lot of people come and go, and I can't imagine how many people my trainers have seen come and go. Like it's this is very grueling. So whether we're kind of fine tuning things by trying to practice, trying to get our moves right, trying to make sure that we can get everything so we don't hurt our own selves. Because I don't know if you've ever seen Randy Orton. He's adjusted the way he does the RKO because
Hmm.
so he doesn't hurt himself.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
there's there's little things to where the way he was landing, he already has wild shoulders. So it's like you don't want to mess those up on on your money move. So sometimes it's not necessarily uh just practicing like, hey, I want to do this. It's making sure you're fine tuning them to make sure that not only they're effective when you're in the ring, but that they're effective for you as well as they look good to the people watching.
Yeah.
So a lot comes through training.
Well, the other thing is too, you had mentioned, guys like Randy Orton, changing up his style. It's like it's important to work smarter instead of harder. You want to
Yes.
execute the moves safely so that you're not hurting yourself or your partner or opponent, and you're making sure that you're able to put on the match safely.
Yes. Very so. Yeah.
Yeah. Who have been some of your favorite opponents to work with over the years? People to work with, I guess I should say.
Um. So like right now, it's a lot. A lot of the people that I've gotten to work are my bets, and they're people that like not to like if they're listening, not to date them, but they're people that when I was a kid, I remember seeing them on MySpace, or I remember seeing posters of them like at there's a local record store that used to be around called Dimple Records, and sometimes I'd see posters there. I see flyers and all that around town, and some of those guys like El Chupacabra. I've got to have a couple matches with him, and those were very fun as well as a learning experience. Um, the Big Ugly, who I train under, that's been like I've had one match with him, and it's like a very fun story for me that I like to like tell him from my point of view every once in a while. But um, I guess I guess just to kind of give you the abbreviations of the story, um, we it was my third match, and we were working a fair, and it was a six-man tag, and it was me, a character who I don't really like too much, but his name's Blacklight. Uh, but it was our first few matches, so we were teaming, and Super Cobra and him and the Big Ugly, like they've known each other very long, so you know how that works, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we're going against Jaya Jewel, we're going against Jack Tracy and Drake Frost, who is also one of my favorite vets that he's taught me a lot. And I learned a lot in this match from him and Super Cobra. But so we have our match, and just our timing was a little off, but we win the match. We were getting our hands raised, and I look over, Blacklight looks over, and we don't see Chupacabra anywhere. And we're at like a baseball field, and I look halfway down. He's already marching all the way down, and he was super mad. Just the match didn't go the way he liked it to go, and that's my earliest story with who is now like my main coach, and he's trained like a lot of guys,
Hmm.
and his most notable guys are John Morrison. Um, John Morrison had trained out here in SPW when he was getting his start, like in between doing Tough Enough, like before he had started. Uh,
On
I
the
want
main
to say
roster.
maybe it was Tough Enough 2. He didn't get it, but Tough Enough 3 he got it. But either way, his first time when he didn't get it, he started coming out and training. He was already doing schooling at UC Davis, which is a local college around here. He was already doing schooling out there, and like he wanted to polish his wrestling, so he started doing that. And he was training under my coach, the Big Ugly. And he's also trained Timothy Thatcher, which a lot of Timothy Thatcher's wrestling, I can see where he got a lot of his early starts, because that's a lot of what I learned with the Big Ugly, and it's really cool. He's also trained one of my first coaches, El Flaco Loco, who's the reason why I started taking training seriously again. When I started 2 years ago, I saw his post on Instagram, and I started coming out. So I get to train with my trainer and the person who trained him. Um, as well as his son, Titus Alexander, who's kind of making waves out of Japan right now, and he's wrestled a lot of people. He wrestled Will Ospreay a year or two ago, but this guy's on the rise. Like I got to have one match with Titus, and it was crazy. I can see why he's where he's at right
Yeah.
now. And it's training under the Big Ugly. So right now, I'm trying to kind of just keep my nose to the grind with him. But he's definitely the Big Ugly is one of my favorite people. Not only just in wrestling, but he's one of my favorite people who taught me a lot. Just wrestling so far. Some of my favorite other people to wrestle is I team with Reese the Beast Leonard. We held tag team gold in world in what was it, WWZ for about 1 year. Yeah, about 1 year. So we held it there. I was super happy once we won it. But he's definitely one of my favorite people to be in the ring with. Jaya Jewel, he's taught me a lot in my early career. He's a guy about my age, so I want to say a little bit younger than me, about my age. I'm not even sure, but that guy is crazy. If you can look him up, the Crazy Cajun Jaya Jewel, he's also making waves right now in Japan. He's taught me a lot. I've been able to just kind of ride in the car with him and kind of just chill with him a little bit and talk to him before matches and share just different shows and share different memories with him. And it's cool to see what people can teach you in the ring as well as outside of the ring. So he's definitely one of my favorite people that have taught me a lot just wrestling. Yeah, just to name a few, the list literally goes on.
Yeah.
There's so many.
I mean, it's crazy to think about all the talent that is coming out of Japan now. They're just doing wonders here in the United
Yeah.
States. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and vice versa. The numbers of our
People from
California
US.
guys that are making their waves in
Mhm.
Japan. Like I was stating earlier, we have right now we have Brooke Havoc from our local NorCal scene. We have Brooke Havoc, we have Starboy Charlie, we have the Crazy Cajun Jai Jewel, and we have the future franchise Titus Alexander. Like we have a lot of people making waves. We have Alpha Zoe. He was making waves out in Japan. So we have a lot of people out in California trying to do their thing out there and make sure not only them come up, but make an opportunity for everyone else to come up with them. So a lot is going on, not only in Japan, but down here in California, trying to do our same thing out there in Japan.
What's your favorite part about training new wrestlers?
I guess I don't know. So I work with kindergartners, and I help like train like new people who are like freshly getting to wrestling. So sometimes it's just seeing that like, oh man, like this, but like you don't know this at all, and like it's so uncoordinated. And some people are really coordinated, and some people aren't. And so it's just kind of seeing the varying levels, as well as just kind of just seeing people how they act acclimate to things. That's kind of some of my favorite things because like this stuff's really hard. So I remember when I first took my bump, I was like, oh my God, like all my wind came out, like I didn't know what to do. So just seeing how some people like take their bumps and they're like, all right, cool, get up. Like this is all I ever wanted. Get up, like some people react very differently to certain things. Some people can do like, I love doing rolls, like forward rolls, back rolls, stuff like that. Some people may not be able to do rolls as well as I can, or rolls as well as the next person. So seeing how people do their things, especially when they're first starting, and then seeing how it picks up as they keep like working on it and keep understanding, okay, we do this, like when we go to training, we do this, we do that, we do this, we do that. So I need to start working on this. Then I need to start working on that. Then I need to start. So seeing people start kind of getting to the grind of things,
Yeah.
that's really fun because I wasn't like I wasn't there long ago, and I'm not gonna say like I'm a coach. I'm more helping with coaching
Mhm.
because I still have a lot of things that I'm learning, and I still have a lot. Like as much as I've learned, I still make revisions because I'm like, oh, okay, well, I was just retaught. Maybe do this instead of that. It just looks a little bit better.
Yeah.
So doing stuff like that, and seeing how people like, oh, okay, let's do it this way. Then like seeing how people acclimate to it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, no, it's really fun, kind of learning how to coach and learning how to be kind of more direct with people instead of because the last thing you want to be told in wrestling is you did a good job and you did it, but everyone around you is telling you, yep, good job, good job, good job. And some people aren't even hiding, they're not even like looking at you, good job. And you did something wrong. I want to be able to tell them, okay, here's what we can fix. I don't want to tell them good job every time, even though like they just did horribly or they have something they could work on or whatever the case. I want to be able to like, okay, here's what we can work on. So let's try this next time instead of good job. And they don't know what to fix. They just think they did a good job,
Right.
you know? So
It's
I would
it's
rather, yeah.
it's all about the progression and about, the experiences and learning new things, trying new things, making sure like this technique works or this doesn't. How can I improve? What can I do to get better? And so you're just teaching them, what you've learned, and all the while you're still learning as well.
Yeah, exactly. And if I can like explain to them why it works better, then I'll definitely, if I'll definitely do that. If I can't, right now I'm still getting better at I can show you right now I'm still processing not only why, but how to do this properly and how to show you how to do this properly. Because it's one thing for me to do it and do it to a lot of people who know how to do it. But when it's with a whole group of people who do not know how to do this thing, now it's having to break it down step by step. So I'm still getting better at doing things step by step, opposed to just kind of giving you the just long sweep of things.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely a blast of learning as well as uh, helping coach.
Yeah. Now, you brought this up just a few minutes ago. We talked about this off the air before we got started. You're a teacher as well in the
Yes.
public school system. What got you involved with that?
So it just I before I started working at school, like for the school system, I was just kind of working random jobs. Like I think I mentioned, like my first job was a skating rink. Uh, After that, I was like working at a sandwich shop, and like one of my friends, her mom worked. I'm not sure if she still works in the school district, but at the time she had worked in the school district, and she told me like, "Hey, I think you have the temperament to work with kids. Like, I think you have the patience. I think you have the temperament. I think you have the attitude. Like, I think you have everything. I just think you do well." So I applied, and I initially started with want to say he was a first grader. He was in a wheelchair, and he like I was just kind of helping him get around, making sure he was getting lunch, just taking him to classes. So that was kind of my first venture into the school system. And then the next day I had something totally different. Like I was just kind of bouncing from assignment to assignment. And then eventually I settled down with a boy who was nonverbal, and he was also in a wheelchair. And I worked with him for maybe about 2 months, and then got I got I got moved into a class that was labeled ED. It's emotional distress, and it was varying backgrounds of kids, whether they had a rough home life, whether they just were just too energetic to function. Like they just could not focus at all. Whether they they're like the list goes on, but it was a lot of things that typical general classes, the teachers like, okay, just go to the office. Okay, just go to the office. Just they could not, or they just did not want to deal with those kids. So they would just always sent off to the office, or they'd be in detention, or they'd act up because they weren't getting attention from home, and now they're not getting attention at school. So they would end up uh, in the classroom that I worked in, and those kids, like, they taught me a lot, like a lot, because there were a lot of kids from my kind of background where they they understood what was going on around them, but it was just stuff kind of going on at home, whether maybe they weren't getting the attention that they felt they needed, or they just weren't getting the attention that they needed, whether they were skipping school, whether that they were like smoking weed or whatever with their friends, or they're getting into like things that they should not be getting into during school hours, or during getting into at that age. Like all those kids, I was like, okay, I can relate with that. Like I grew up with kids like that, or I grew up doing stuff like that. So when I was working with those kids, it was I was uh, I was maybe 22 when I first started. So I was super relatable. Like the way I dressed, the music I listened to was pretty much the same music that they were listening to. So it was very easy to connect with them. And some of them liked wrestling, so that would help.
Mhm.
Um, but like uh like a lot of those kids, they just really needed someone to listen to them, or someone to go hang out with them and play basketball. Like that's what I did with them. I just played basketball. We would listen to music. I would talk about whatever's going on in their life. They tell me what's going on. Like it was very it kind of made me think about those other teachers. Are like, what's going on? Like it's not that hard to connect with these kids. Like
No.
it just not takes it not only takes the extra second, but okay, they're into this. You can see that they're into this. They're showing that they're into this. Maybe talk about this. You know, don't be afraid to kind of like branch into their interests, especially if that's your job. Like, don't be afraid to and branch into
Yeah,
their
take
interests,
take
because
up study up
it's
on
only
their
gonna enrich
interest.
it, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, it enriches it. So a lot of those kids, they really helped me in the sense of when I would tell them something, I was like, well, I think maybe I should, I should do the same thing I'm telling them, like it only seems right. Um, and some of these kids, as I got older and they got older, I had went out to a bar somewhere, and one of these kids, he had asked me like, "Hey, didn't you work at that school?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's you." And he was like, "Whoa, you remember me?" And I was like, "Yeah, I remember you." And he kind of gave me like a short thank you, I appreciate you just kind of being cool and not being just on me like the way all the other adults were. Like you were just kind of cool with my existence. And I was like, that made me feel good in the sense of when I would go to work, the class that I was in, we were an all black staff, and I knew what it was like to go home and get yelled at about something. And he knew what it was like to go home and get yelled at about something, whether it was your fault, whether it wasn't, whether it's about this or that. But when those kids came to school, I didn't want to yell at them because I didn't know what was going on at home. I didn't want to make them feel bad. I wanted to make sure that they came home, they came to school and they're at as positive as an environment as we can set for them. So when that kid had told me that, it made me feel like, okay, at least I was doing what I was trying to do. I didn't know I didn't know that I was doing it when I was 22, but I was doing the right thing. I was acting off my heart. Um, so yeah, working in the school systems definitely helped me a lot. Definitely helped me a lot. Uh, just definitely helped me learn and grow, as well as just kind of be a good human, kind of be able to see things from the other side and not always think you know what it was like to be a kid and an adult would kind of yell at you and it wasn't your fault.
Hmm.
I tried to, okay, well, what happened? So I can understand, okay, was it your fault or was it not your fault?
Right.
Instead of being like, hey, it was your fault. Because you remember that feeling and there's nothing you could do about it as a kid. It's
Right.
kind of, so I kind of try to eliminate that as much as I can, especially working with kindergartners. I try to eliminate that feeling as much as you can, um, to make them feel at ease. You never know what anyone's going through, but especially at a kid when they're coming to school, they're coming to a good environment. So you do not want to, come here and make them feel at ease by or unease by you did this, you're wrong, you're bad, you're this. So
Right. And just like this podcast here, the kids should feel like they're in a welcomed environment and a
yeah.
pleasant and friendly environment, and you were able to provide that for them, which is it really is heartwarming because, kids today they go through so much, especially with the internet and social media, technology. It's a
Oh man.
huge part of our lives, and to see, like, things that somebody, a little kid could be going through. It's just too much. It can be tough out there.
Definitely. I couldn't imagine what it would be like for a kid growing up with the technology we have now, like all the social media.
Hmm.
I couldn't imagine how consuming it is. It is on them because I'm like I see how it is consuming on the friends around me and on people
Hmm.
around me. But to be a kid and that's kind of all you know,
Hmm.
I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine.
Well, you were able to make these kids' days, and I know that that really meant a lot to them. So good for you for stepping up, and being able to help them out, when going through something like that.
Yes,
It's really
definitely
it's really great.
someone's gotta do it. Someone's gotta do it, and there's more than me, and hopefully there's more people that are willing to step up essentially to try to help form the future of not only our nation but the world.
Hmm.
We never know where these kids are gonna go and who they're gonna be. So, trying to do our best on a individual level and then in communal level to try to help these kids become the people that not only that their parents want them to be, but who they want to be themselves.
Right. Right. Why do you feel passionate about helping out in your community?
Um, I think it's something that grew within me. I don't know that it's something that as a kid I had. Like I grew up as an only child, so I felt looking back, I felt very self-centered. Like everything just definitely revolved around me. But um as I grew older and I feel I learned from the mistakes I had made as a child, like at home and stuff like that, I felt that it once I started working at schools and working for the school district and helping out kids, I think it was a moment like it was like 10 years ago. But this one kid, she said, I learned how to make a bee. And I was the one that helped her learn how to make a bee. And I was like, that's a simple thing, we know how to you know how to make a B. You can make a B in your sleep. But the fact that she learned how to make the letter B for the first time, and I was the person, is like, to me, that's wild. That's a thing that will go on for the rest of her life. She won't remember that, but I remember it. I don't, so things like that, I think that's kind of what helped me, like, oh man, like this is something way bigger than me. To think that someone learned a life skill, or like a little bit of a life skill, you know, from me, like that's cool. That means I got to try to do this right. Like the best I can. I got to try to do this. I got to do this correctly, because you don't want to teach a kid wrong and then they go on being wrong. That's, you don't want to form bad habits. So to the best of our ability, that's what you're to do as a teacher, is teach these kids the correct habits, the correct way of doing things, whether it's speaking, whether it's, doing their math, whether it's writing, all that stuff, interacting with like their peers, stuff like that. It's very important. And I think once I just got started, it kind of became something that I became passionate. I think it's my second passion after wrestling. And I'd like to think that once my wrestling's done, like whenever that is, I don't know when that is, but whenever wrestling decides it's done with me, or I decide it's done with it, um, teaching would probably definitely be the thing that I'd just lean back into, of any form, like of any form. Like my dad was a college teacher before, so it's something that, as I've started doing it, it's something that I think is very, very cool. And I think it's heartwarming to be able to, I don't know, it's kind of that old school caveman stuff of like teaching someone something that they can pass on, like
Exactly.
yeah, like it's like, I just love the core thought of that, of really being able to teach someone how to fish, you know? So
Yeah.
I think just that passion of it. Once we got started, man, I think like any other passion, once you found that one little moment, it just kind of just the barn door just went open and everything came out. So yeah, I love it. Even on my frustrating days, even on the days where like I literally want to grow my hair out again and then just rip it all out. Like even on those days, like love I love being with the kids. Like they're cool. They teach me something. Even kindergartners teach me something. They're beyond observant, which is something that I think we forget as we get older. And if you don't have kids, like I don't have kids, so this is kind of the only interaction I have into like how they process things. And I'm like, man, they're smarter, like they're quicker than a whip, dude. Like it's amazing. So like this has taught me, like they've taught me a lot. The high schoolers taught me a lot. It's yeah, it's definitely grown into something that I didn't ever imagine when I was a kid, that I'd be sorry, that I'd be a teacher essentially. Never in my wildest dreams. I thought I'd only be a wrestler or something cooler than that, but I never thought I'd be a teacher. So yeah, it's definitely cool.
And you've definitely got the drive for it, and you really have that desire to want to help children and kids
Yeah, 10 years,
become
10 years
leaders.
plus.
Yeah.
10 years, been on 10 years plus, baby.
Well, this has been wonderful getting the chance to speak with you. And I also want to say thank you, not only for coming on the show, doing the podcast, but, reaching out to me, really,
Oh
liking
yeah,
what we were
dude.
doing. It means a lot because we're trying to grow and be, one of the top wrestling podcasts out there in the world. So for you
Yeah,
to
no,
come
I
and reach
love it.
out to me, it means a lot. And again, thank you so much for coming on to the show. It means a lot to me, my listeners and viewers on YouTube that are watching this. Where can people find more about you on social media if they want to get in touch with you?
So if they wanted to find me, they can find me on Instagram. I am at Lo Devereaux Pro, which is LODEVEREAUXPRO. And you can kind of just catch up whatever I'm doing. Right now, I just kind of came back from Portland, and that was a fun venture. So if you wanted to catch any of the clips of that, I was wrestling at DOA Wrestling, and the show was The Art of War. If you wanted to check that out on IWTV, check out DOA Wrestling, The Art of War. Right now, I'm a solo man hanging out. And, well, besides my son back here, we're both chilling.
Oh,
But yeah,
nice.
you can find us both at Lo Devereaux Pro on Instagram. So check us out.
All right. Well, thanks again, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. Whenever's clever, man. I not always have the time, but I can always make the time.
Awesome.
So
Thanks again.
no, thank you, brother,
All right. Take care.
and yourself.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.